On the oceanic planet Nerithus, sunlight scattered through aquamarine skies like shards of glass. Vast silver domes floated across the seas, each one a city of the Illyrians, a race whose translucent skin shimmered with the colors of their emotions. They were beings of empathy, telepathically linked to one another in a web of feeling so pure that lies were impossible. But outside the domes lay a galaxy of danger. For the Illyrians, no threat was greater than humans. The ancient wars had scarred them deeply. Human colonizers had once invaded Nerithus to harvest its luminous crystals, devastating entire Illyrian sanctuaries. Those who survived rebuilt in secrecy, isolating themselves behind shimmering energy domes, vowing never to trust a human again. And in one such dome, Aurelian, lived Lyra, a young Illyrian girl whose fear of humans ran deeper than any. Lyra's mother had been killed when she was a child, caught in an explosion caused by a stray human mining drone. Since then, she'd worn her terror like a second skin. Even her emotional shimmer, a soft indigo hue that ran across her arms, flickered at the mere mention of the word human. Her father, Elander, a scientist and keeper of the dome's archives, often told her, "Fear keeps us alive, Lyra. But love makes us remember why we fight to live." Lyra would smile faintly at that, though she'd never truly understood. Love to her was safety. Familiar faces, familiar telepathic warmth. Nothing beyond the dome could ever bring that. But fate had other plans. Part 2. The Message from the Void. It began on an ordinary morning when Lyra was tending the Corallis gardens, vast fields of bioluminescent plants that glowed in response to song. As she hummed a soft tone, the flowers lit up in waves, forming shapes that resembled starlight dancing on water. Then, without warning, a deep vibration echoed through the dome. The air itself seemed to ripple. Lyra looked up to see the protective barrier flicker for a heartbeat, and then stabilize. Moments later, the Council's alert tone resonated through every Illyrian mind. Unidentified craft detected. Possible human origin. Remain within safe zones. Panic surged through the telepathic web, 1,000 minds trembling in unison. Lyra clutched her chest, feeling the tidal wave of fear wash over her. A crash resounded somewhere beyond the southern ridge. The dome's surface shimmered violently before sealing again. And then silence. That night Lyra couldn't sleep. Her mind pulsed with curiosity despite her terror. She felt something strange, an emotional frequency unlike any she'd sensed before. It was weak, distant, but not hostile, almost like a voice whispering through the current of her mind. "Help, please." It was not Illyrian. It was human. Part 3. The Forbidden Rescue. The next day, Lyra tried to ignore the voice, but it grew stronger with every hour. Finally, she could no longer resist. Carrying a small energy lantern, she slipped out toward the southern ridge under cover of fog. The edge of the dome was lined with coral-tipped pylons that glowed with protective energy. Beyond them was only darkness and death. Yet as Lyra approached, she saw something that made her stop breathing. A human spacecraft lay half-submerged in the shallow waters, smoke curling from its side. And near it a figure, motionless, half buried in sand. Her entire body screamed to turn back. But the telepathic whisper returned, weak and pleading. "Please, I don't want to die here." Against every instinct she'd ever known, Lyra deactivated a small section of the dome's barrier, a dangerous act punishable by exile, and stepped outside for the first time in her life. The air felt sharp and heavy, unlike the soft-filtered atmosphere within Aurelian. Each breath burned. Yet she pressed forward, kneeling beside the fallen human. He was young, perhaps 20 standard years, with dark hair matted by seawater and a deep gash across his temple. His pulse was faint but steady. When his eyes fluttered open, Lyra's heart almost stopped. They were brown, deep as the starless void, filled not with malice, but confusion. "You're real," he whispered, voice hoarse. "An Illyrian." Lyra froze. She'd never heard a human voice before. Not in person. Only in recordings of threats and warnings. But his tone was soft, desperate. "Please," he murmured again, "help me." Lyra hesitated, her glowing skin flickering between fear blue and empathy pink. Against everything she'd been taught, she touched his arm gently. A shock of emotion hit her, memories flashing in her mind. Fire, metal, isolation, guilt. So much guilt. This human wasn't a soldier. He was alone, lost and broken. "My name is Ethan Roller," he whispered before fainting again. And that was the night the alien girl who feared humans carried one into her world. Part 4, Secrets Beneath the Dome. Hiding Ethan was not easy. Lyra's father would have exiled her if he'd known. Humans were not allowed within the dome, ever. So she took him to the abandoned lower gardens, where the energy currents were weak and few ever ventured. For days, she tended to him in secret, using healing gels from the coral plants and nutrient vapors to restore his strength. When he awoke fully, he tried to sit up. "Where am I?" "Aurelian," Lyra said softly. "You're under an Illyrian dome. You shouldn't be here." "I didn't mean to crash," he said, grimacing. "I was on a survey mission, unarmed. My ship hit an energy pulse and went down." Lyra studied him carefully. A survey mission. Humans were banned from this system decades ago. He nodded weakly. "I know. But some of us, we're trying to make things right. To prove humans and Illyrians don't have to be enemies." Lyra frowned. "That's impossible. You killed thousands of us. And you think I don't know that?" His voice cracked with emotion. "My grandmother was a soldier in those wars. She told me what happened. I came here to understand, to see if there's still beauty left after what we destroyed." His honesty disarmed her. Illyrians could sense lies, and his emotions, regret, sincerity, longing, were unmistakably real. Over the following days, as Ethan recovered, they spoke more. He asked about the Illyrian ways, how their empathy worked, how the domes were built. In return, he told her about the vast human worlds beyond the stars, about oceans of clouds on Titan Prime and floating cities on Venus Nova. Lyra had never imagined such things. And for the first time, her fear of humans began to waver. But her secret couldn't last forever. Part 5. The Discovery. One night, while Lyra and Ethan watched the sea lights shimmer beyond the dome, a low hum filled the air. Her father appeared at the edge of the chamber, his expression grave. "Lyra, what have you done?" Her heart froze. Elander's eyes, normally calm and gentle, now burned with anguish. Behind him stood 2 members of the council guard, their energy spears drawn. "Father, please," Lyra cried. "He's not like the others. He means no harm." Elander's voice shook. "You broke the sacred code. You brought a human inside our sanctuary. Do you realize what could happen if the council learns of this?" Ethan stepped forward weakly. "If you want me gone, I'll go. I never wanted to cause trouble." But before anyone could speak further, a thunderous tremor shook the dome. The ground split open with a metallic shriek. The energy barrier collapsed. An explosion of water and light filled the chamber as the outer wall gave way. The dome's defense grid flickered erratically. Through the rupture, black drones emerged, human military machines, scanning for survivors. Lyra's father turned pale. They've found us. Ethan's face went white. That's not my doing. Swear. Those are Dominion drones. Pirates who raid old colonies. The council guards raised their weapons, but the drones fired first. Bolts of plasma tore through the chamber. Elander shoved Lyra aside just as an explosion ripped through the wall. "Run!" he shouted. Lyra screamed as the blast engulfed him in light. When the smoke cleared, her father was gone. Part 6. The flight across the wreckage. Lyra and Ethan fled through collapsing corridors, chased by swarms of drones. Ethan grabbed a fallen guard's weapon, firing bursts of energy that shattered the machine's midair. "How are you doing that?" Lyra gasped. "I'm not military," he said grimly, "but I was trained for emergencies." They reached the outer causeway, an arched bridge of glowing crystal that led toward the emergency escape pods. But the path was blocked by a massive crack in the dome. Beyond it lay open sea and freedom. Lyra hesitated, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Everything I've ever known, it's gone." Ethan took her hand. His warmth startled her. "Then come with me. There's more out there, Lyra. You don't have to be afraid anymore. But the others, they'll rebuild, like they always have. You can help them from the stars." Her skin flickered with conflicting hues. Fear blue, grief purple, hope gold. Finally she nodded. Together they leapt across the gap and sealed themselves inside an escape pod. As the engines roared to life, the dome of Aurelion shattered behind them, fragments of their world scattering like starlight across the waves. Part 7. Among the stars the pod drifted through the atmosphere, breaking free into orbit. Below them, the ruins of Aurelion glimmered faintly beneath the water's surface. Lyra pressed her hand against the viewport, trembling. "I never thought I'd see the stars like this," she whispered. Ethan smiled gently. "They're beautiful, aren't they? My people look up at them every night, never realizing how many lives are connected by their light." She looked at him, studying the lines of his face, the quiet sadness in his eyes. He wasn't like the monsters from her childhood stories. He was just human, imperfect, fragile, and kind. As days turned to weeks aboard the small ship Ethan repaired from the pod, they journeyed toward a neutral colony in the Vera sector, a haven for refugees of every species. Lyra learned to navigate the ship, to speak without relying on telepathy, to dream without fear. Ethan, in turn, learned to feel her emotions, not through mind link, but through simple closeness. They shared laughter, stories, silence. And somewhere along that long stretch of starlight, affection bloomed. Part 8. The promise. One evening, as they passed through the twin moons of Vera, Ethan turned to her. "Lyra," he said softly, "I know what your people think of mine, and I can't blame them. But if we ever hope to change that, it has to start somewhere." Lyra tilted her head, eyes glimmering with silver light. "Where does it start?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small ring, simple silver, embedded with a single fragment of luminous Nerathian coral. "Maybe here," he gasped. Among Illyrians, coral was sacred, the essence of their world's soul. "This is not a human custom," she whispered. "It's ours." Ethan smiled. "Then maybe it's both." Her hands trembled as he placed the ring upon her finger. A soft glow enveloped them both, a merging of light and emotion so pure that for a moment, the divide between species vanished entirely. "I was taught to fear humans my whole life," Lyra said, tears in her voice. "But now, I can't imagine the stars without you." Ethan brushed her cheek gently. "Then we'll face them together." Part 9. The new dawn. When they finally reached the Vera colonies, the sight took Lyra's breath away. Floating cities of glass and light hung above the clouds, populated by hundreds of races living side by side. No domes, no barriers, just coexistence. They were welcomed as refugees, and for the first time, Lyra saw humans and Illyrians speaking without fear. Slowly, stories of Aurelian spread, of how one alien girl defied the rules and saved a human life, and how that act of compassion reignited hope across two civilizations. Months later, standing on the observation deck of the new Illyrian embassy, Lyra watched the sunrise bathe the city in gold. Ethan stood beside her, their fingers intertwined. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked quietly. "Your home." "I carry it with me," she said. "In every breath. In every star." He smiled. "Then maybe this, us, is what your father meant when he said love makes us remember why we fight to live." Lyra turned toward him, her skin glowing softly with warmth. "And maybe this time we'll teach the galaxy what love truly means." As the twin suns rose over Vera, the alien girl who once feared humans leaned forward, her lips meeting his. The light around them flared, a perfect blend of Illyrian luminescence and human dawn. For the first time in history, two worlds began to heal.